Welcome to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast with John Kim and Noelle Cordeaux. The next Catalyst Coaching Intensive begins November 5th. If you're inspired to begin your own coaching practice or just want to learn a little bit more about what it's all about, visit shift.us, SHFT.us, for more information. Your adventure awaits.
Hey guys, what's up? Noelle and I are back and we are talking about a really important topic today. This is a question that I get all the time in coaching people with relationships, and it's basically this: how do you know if you're with the wrong person? Noelle,
Yeah.
what do you think about that topic?
Well, it's a very common topic in coaching, certainly, and especially in relationship coaching. And I honestly get it a lot when I'm doing divorce recovery coaching, because people are kind of wondering how the hell it all went wrong.
Yes, but before we get to that, I want to say a couple of things. One, before Noelle and I jumped on Skype, she texted me. I forgot my password. I can't get into Skype, and I texted her back that her life is a sitcom. And and so Noelle has been traveling back and forth from LA to Philly, and just like every day's an adventure, and it's like fucking Harold and Kumar, me being Kumar, and it's been hilarious and fun, and you know what? It's like your life really is like a sitcom.
It is. My life is a sitcom, and it's just, I actually love that this is a life coaching podcast, because I talk about it a lot. There was a time we talk about setting your goals publicly. And I put forth that I wanted to be a bi-coastal coach, and God damn it, it happened.
Yeah. With or without you, it's happening.
It's happening. So my life is a sitcom. I just got home. Every time I come home, I have to beg for acceptance from my dog again. George is so sad, and he loves me, and he gets so mad at me. So we got to a good place today, and then I had to take him to the vet, and he's pissed at me again. But we'll get through it.
So are you going to bring your dog to LA?
He's going to come with me in January. For the month of January, we're going to drive my car across country, and then doggy is going to stay for a little while.
That's amazing. So another adventure for you.
I know. Life is not boring.
No, that's a good thing. And the other thing I wanted to say is you are one of my favorite humans.
Aw, John.
Yes.
Likewise.
And that is I'm not just saying that because we're on a podcast or I feel like I have to. And here's why. So I really mean that. And, Noelle and I have known each other for a long time, but also, a lot of that time was kind of peripherally, just, internet, communicating via email. But, in the last couple of years, just us with the startup, we've been engaging a lot more. And here's what I discovered about Noelle Cordeaux.
Uh-oh.
She holds up. And this is one of the greatest compliments that, in my opinion, anyone could give me. So what I mean by that is you are consistent like butter. Because there's a lot of people who you get to know and then they're different and they're not who you thought they were, or there was some false advertising. But Noelle is the exact same person she was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, she's changed and grown and she has her own story, etc. But overall at the core, you're just you.
Aw. Thank you. That's awesome and super sweet and a huge compliment.
Yeah, you hold up and you say who you are. You're consistent, and those are really important character traits. And so that's why you are one of my favorite humans.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
You're the best. That's sweet.
All right, let's talk about how we know when we're with the wrong person. Because, you don't really know you're with the wrong person sometimes unless you're with the right one, because wrong is not obvious, right? Besides the obvious, besides the physical abuse, emotional abuse, and you just know it's wrong. There's a lot of wrong people that turn wrong over time, or it's very subtle, or you wake up one day and you're like, this doesn't feel right. There's a lot of gray areas.
And I want to note that you and I are going to probably have very different perspectives on this topic.
Sure.
Because you see the world in terms of, and again, this isn't wrong. The way that people see the world is just the way they see the world, but you see the world in terms of binary, and you're looking for your true love, your one and only. And
Right.
I don't see the world that way. I
Right.
see the world as non-binary. I see the world as having many potential loves. I see the world as, you know, there might be somebody that's fundamentally incongruent with you, but lots of different relationships bring lots of different things to the table, and it's okay to become complete through experiencing difference.
Right. And I love that. I love that. And I think that's, we can't both be the same people with the same views. That would be really boring,
Yeah,
you know?
that would be boring. But let's get into it.
Yeah.
So in your life, in looking back, if you were going to talk to your younger self, what would you say mentally, physically, and emotionally would be the red flag?
Oh man, this is great because I just happened to have wrote an article about this. So for me, it's easy because I have like cheat notes. For Noelle, she's just going straight off improv. I think that wrong usually doesn't come with flags or neon lights. I think that sometimes wrong isn't wrong until it is. So like, and here are some of my, and I just have a few here, but here are some of my signs that you're with the wrong person. And of course, wrong, in my opinion, not Noelle's, but in my opinion, wrong equals unhealthy, unsustainable, and then kind of like this idea of that you're building on sand. The first reason, the first sign, I guess, is that you don't feel safe. And there could be a lot of reasons why you don't feel safe, but I feel like if you're in a relationship where you don't feel safe, whether it's character assassination or control or crippling jealousy, poor communication, whatever it is, if you just don't feel safe, I think the first thing to do is explore yourself. Is it something that's happening within you, or is it the relationship and the other person? And if it's the relationship and the other person, and they either choose not to work on it or they don't have the ability to, then I feel that you're with the wrong person.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I want
Okay.
to add to the concept of unsafe.
Mm.
Uh, so, something that I've looked for in relationships over the years as the red flag is like, does this person put me down?
Oh
Does this
yeah,
person like
it's
pick
huge.
apart my physical appearance? Does this person jeer at me or make fun of me? Because there's a big difference between having a really great banter with someone and somebody that like actually makes fun of you and puts you down.
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
things cross over the line in that way, it's a big, huge signal to me that whether this person is a friend or a lover or a partner, I don't know if I like this thing.
If someone is putting you down, I mean, they're basically bullying you,
Yes,
and
yes.
that is that is definitely not safe. It's definitely means that you're with the wrong person. I think safety is kind of soil. I think if you don't feel safe, you're not going to build trust. And without trust, there's no relationship.
And I think that's really common, like it's really common. I mean, I hear partners all the time refer to each other as like stupid, and I
Yeah.
like it shocks me, and I'm like, oh my God, like that's your partner. Like, why would you say that?
Yeah,
But
it makes me sad. And I get that there's joking because you're like, and of course there's tone. Like if you're like, "Hey, stupid," whatever, and if people are okay with that, but underneath it's all love, I get it. But when you start getting into like, assess like, you're an asshole or you're, the B word or whatever, when you start calling people names like that, it's not. You're really doing damage. It's not safe.
it's not safe or it's not healthy.
Definitely, 100%.
No. So what else do you have?
The second one is speaking of banter. If shit's just boring because there's no banter, so like. And you know what? You define what banter means for you. It's one of the things that I've learned is a piston in the engine to drive the relationship forward, because hotness and sexual chemistry and sex and all that, that's great, and of course that's high up, and everyone, that's kind of the movie magic that we all look for. But I mean, how much time are we actually physically having sex with someone? A couple times a week, 3, 4 times a week if it's good. Most of the time, it's spending time with the person as a person, and sharing meals, hanging out in the car, like whatever it is, doing daily life. And if you don't have banter, whether that's humor or intellectual or something that gets you guys engaged with each other, the relationship is going to feel flat, and I think you're with the wrong person.
Yeah, and so uh, so banter is definitely important, but I think it's important to me and it's important to you. You and I are both very verbal people,
Yes.
and we connect to others through verbal chemistry.
Yes.
And so if you're somebody that is quiet and introverted and a deep thinker, this goes back to the love languages.
Right.
So for you and I, words of affirmation is probably one of our love languages. We need that verbal connection.
Yes, 100%.
For somebody who doesn't have that, being in a room with a person and just sitting there contently might be enough. So,
Right, right.
if you're listening to this, I would say go back to your love languages and figure out how you like to be and exist in a relationship, because banter doesn't really work for everybody.
Yeah, and that's a great point. If that's not your wiring and it's not something that is, super important to you, then it may not be. And Noelle's right. I mean, for me, it's really important. You
And
know.
I want to put my sex therapist hat on for a second, and I want to tackle just an offhand comment about like how many how much can you actually have sex with with
Oh
someone with
shit!
a partner.
Oh shit!
Yeah, no, totally. No, I do, because I think it's important, as we're coming at this as from our personal selves, but from a professional standpoint, I want to make sure that anybody who's listening to it who isn't like you or I doesn't think that there's something wrong with them.
God, talking about the
Yeah.
people that just like have to schedule sex and all that, and that world. Most people I know who now have, they're living the picket fence life. They only have sex like twice a week, and they're
Twice a
scheduled.
week is great.
Well, not, great for them, but not
Great for them.
again, not for us.
But what I wanted to mention was the continuum of skin hunger, where
Mm,
people range from really not needing touch, really not needing sexuality. They might identify as asexual, all the way through to the other end of the spectrum, where you're hypersexual, heavy touch, nymphomaniac, and
right.
anything in between is perfectly fine. So when you're looking for a partner, I think something that's really common that happens, that I've seen a lot in sex therapy land, is that people are mismatched in terms of skin hunger.
Mm.
And it
Skin
causes
hunger.
this,
That's really interesting. That term.
yeah,
It sounds like a porno movie.
it's totally not a porno movie. It's quite literally the degree to which you like to be touched.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, some people can go through their entire existence and be perfectly fine with having a really great, loving, awesome, supportive relationship and really not need that touch, or that sexual fulfillment. And other people are like suction cups. Like they need to
Hmm.
be touched. They need to be attached to their partner. They need
Right.
that physical fulfillment. And you can be compatible on so many different levels. And if that's not there, it can get really difficult.
Yeah, so some people are very tactile. I would say that I fall into that category, and some people just don't like it. They actually they could love someone, but they don't like to be touched all the time.
Yep. Yep. 100%. And that's just, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
It's important to talk about, I think. Like that's a conversation that I've definitely had when I was dating. It's like, how much do you like to be touched? Sounds like a weird question. Super important.
It really is. And what else is important is the communicating, so people aren't left in the dark. And if you don't like to be touched, but you don't communicate that, then the other person can take it as rejection or that they're not attractive.
100%. 100%. Yeah. What else you got
All right.
on the list?
The next one is they always make it about them. So, and by the way, this list isn't like um, a sign to leave the relationship. It's just red flags. I mean, it's a sign if people don't change. But I always say that you don't just leave because you see flags. You leave when the relationship isn't, in your opinion, repairable. So a lot of times people constantly make, like, whatever you do, they'll turn it around and make it about them. And there's nothing. And then what happens is the result of that is you feel very alone in the relationship. You feel very unheard. And there's nothing more sad than being in a relationship but being lonely.
Yes. And communication is so important in this regard,
Hmm.
because a lot of times, especially when there are different love languages or things like this have gone unexpressed, the offending partner has absolutely no idea that the
Right.
person they're engaged with, living with, whatever, feels lonely.
Right. Right.
And it's the last thing that they want, but there's this really great concept in marriage and family therapy that I'm sure you know of, that you treat the relationship as a third entity,
Yeah, I
where,
always say that. Right. It's its own
yeah,
thing.
It's its own thing, and both people have to keep the damn thing alive. And so coming at it from the perspective of not like you're doing this to me, you
Yes.
selfish asshole, but like what can we do to keep this third thing alive?
I love that because when you see, because most people see the relationship as in, okay, it's me and you, and I'm not getting what I want, or there's a lot of blame, a lot of control, judgment. But when you see that it's two people building this other thing, then it's easy to take yourself out of self and say, okay, because it's like it's the same reason why people would do anything for their children. It's like
Right?
this other being, right, that they love. And so if you guys are both building something that is outside of yourself, then it's easier to let that be bigger than you, and then there's a lot more compromise, a lot more willing to, swallow ego, etc.
100%. And there's choice at every turn. It's like,
Yeah.
do you want to act in the interest of the relationship or not? Period.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And at a certain point, there are forks in the road, and the answer might be no. And that's
Right.
okay too.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah, if you don't think, or if things have changed so much where you don't think it's repairable, or two people have just gone in separate directions and they've changed as people, then yeah, maybe the answer is no, and I don't want to invest in this anymore, and that happens all the time.
It does. It happens
Yeah.
all the time. And, I think this is hard on so many different fronts because dating is so hard. So hard.
Yeah,
People
especially
experience,
today.
yeah, like so much rejection. It's hard to find a partner. Hard to find somebody that you're compatible with. So going into this thing, I've coached people through online dating, especially that gets really gnarly.
Yeah.
And going into it and trying to be evaluative, and there's so many things you have to think of up front, and then when you're in the relationship it starts all over again.
Yeah.
So many things that you have to think about all the time and work
And
towards.
also, I think we these days we just hide behind our phone. No one picks up the phone. No one calls. It's via second, third generation messaging like text and DMs, and it's poor communication. Back in the day, and I'm old enough where I remember like in the '80s, and I was just a kid, but like you actually had to call someone or you won't be able to talk to them. So it forced people to actually have human exchanges. Now everything is digital, and it's just I think there's a huge wall with dating where people just aren't on the same page, and most of it is just miscommunication and hiding behind phones.
I completely agree. And I think another thing that happens is the shiny thing syndrome,
Hmm.
where it takes a long time to actually get to know someone. And with online dating and hiding behind your phone and texting and ghosting and the whole nine yards, um, it it's so easy to be dismissive of someone
Yeah,
because they don't measure up to your abstract version of what a human should be from a virtual perspective. And it's
sure.
so fucked. So
And
fucked.
also, there's a lot more false advertising now because there's filters, there's ways that you could present yourself, whether it's video or angles or whatever it is on your social media platforms or dating profiles, where it's you could create a story about you that isn't necessarily true. You may not hold up.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that goes in the other direction too, is a lot of times attraction palettes vary. And so you
Mm,
might have a story in your head about what you're attracted to, and then when you get to know someone physically, mentally, emotionally, intellectually, they become attractive to you. And
yeah,
features that
sure.
weren't attractive before change.
Yes, and there's a lot of that could be happening, but it doesn't because people don't give it a chance. So I really believe in the idea that the process should be peeling an onion, not biting an apple. And
Yes.
a lot of people this generation coming up, who have grown up on swiping and swipe culture, they are biting apples. They're not peeling any onions.
Well, and I think too that has to do with the fact that we're preconditioned to bite apples, right? Like our stimulus is based on sex. We want that apple response. We don't
Yeah,
go into it thinking about long-term fulfillment. We go into it thinking
right.
about immediate gratification.
Sure, and I think it depends on what age you are too. I
Yeah,
definitely in my 20s was all about the apple. Um, Now I'm more about layers.
layers. Now you're onions. Now you
No,
like.
I'm not an onion, but I like peel. Yeah, I need to peel an onion. The next one I have is they're the wrong person for you if they're controlling. Now, here's the thing about controlling. It comes in all different forms. And I think the worst is the subtle control. Because, like, the obvious controlling behavior is obvious, and eventually you're not going to put up with it, especially if you believe that you have value. And the more value you believe you have, the more you'll be able to spot their controlling ways. But it's the subtle control. It's the manipulative, very sneaky, convincing you that it's not them, but you maybe, or, feeling controlled in a very subtle way, or if it happens kind of like a dripping faucet over the years, and you wake up one day and you've like lost yourself or your identity.
That's really common. And, and I want to talk more about the control thing because it does come in so many different forms. Another form of control is bad behavior from a partner, whether that's like overly emotional reactions or screaming or yelling or throwing a fit, anything that your partner does that you develop like almost PTSD. And you're like,
I'm so glad that you're saying this because this is something that people don't think about, right?
Right.
Like
and
they wouldn't define that as control.
Absolutely not. But it's 100% complete, possibly unintentional, but it's fucking emotional manipulation. When somebody acts or behaves in such a way that their partner is held hostage, waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly, right. That's damaging, controlling behavior.
Holy shit, that's what I used to be in my 20s. Steamrolling, short-tempered, and the person I was with was probably always walking on eggshells, and then unhappy and negative and just a really attractive person.
Yeah, he sounds awesome. But you know what? Like, I think I pulled some of that shit when I was going through my divorce. I think I definitely pitched a couple of fits. And
I think everyone who's young and in their 20s go through, a version of this or seasons of it. But it's really interesting to label that as controlling because if you were to ask me then, are you controlling? I'd be, what are you talking about? I let this person do whatever she wants. But according to your definition, of course, that is controlling because you're controlling the space, you're controlling the, like the temperature of the room and all these other things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that goes for relationships other than romantic relationships, too.
Yeah.
Like everybody has that one friend who's like a terrible fucking drunk. And you're like, I don't even want to be with this guy, that's controlling behavior. Like,
man, I love it. When you hijack the energy or you walk into a room and suddenly it's off balance because of you because you're the black hole, then you are controlling. I love that. Thanks for shedding light on that.
Totally.
And the last one I have is, and this is a big topic, and we could talk about it, is and it's general, is poor intimacy. And of course, under intimacy, there's a lot of different things, but I think ultimately intimacy is about connection. So when you disconnect with that person for whatever the reason, and it, and people have drifted so far where that connection is, if you're not able to get it back. Like if the connection in your relationship is like one bar on your cell phone, and no matter where you go or what you do, you just don't get better reception after a while. You're with the wrong person.
Yeah, so this is a super important topic, and I think that this also goes back to love languages.
Yeah.
Because connection is defined by how you give and receive and wish to experience love. So, for example, if you're someone who demonstrates love through acts of service, if you're in a long distance relationship and you're not physically with your partner every day, it's almost impossible to bridge that connection because you're not able to show up in the way that you want to.
Right.
And connection is also respect.
Yeah.
Vulnerability.
Well, connection is also giving the person their own space.
Yeah, giving the person their own space, allowing them to be themselves, complete acceptance. I think vulnerability goes in there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't connect if you're not vulnerable. Like, what are you going to, you're not showing yourself.
Yeah, and that goes along with empathy, where I think that this is one of the most important grown-up skills to have in a relationship is when your partner's going through a shit time. You don't try to fix it for them. but you have empathy for what they're going through and
Yeah.
just, stand there solid like a rock and be like, I know you'll figure it out.
That is sexy. That builds trust. That, guys, and I know I'm generalizing, but I'm talking to men because a lot of times men want to fix things, and sometimes um, they don't want you to fix it. They just want you to be empathetic. They want you to go through it with them. They want you to just provide that space, that safe space.
Absolutely. And it cuts both ways. I mean, there's been nothing more maddening to me in my life when I've had a problem and some dude is like, "Oh, let me fix it for you,
Right.
Buttercup," and I'm like, "Back the fuck up."
Yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, and listen, me included back in the day, that's our knee jerk, because it makes us feel like heroes. And also it's the definition of man. I think that if we don't fix it, especially if it's our, our lover, our partner, then we feel less of a man. So that's why we're kind of trying to put on our cape and trying to fix everything.
And it's equally sexy to have a dude be like, "You're a smart woman. You can handle yourself. Let me know what you need."
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's more attractive. I think that's sexier.
Yeah. Yeah. Straight up.
And that doesn't mean, and here's the thing, a lot of people can be like, oh, well, that means that he doesn't care, you know?
No, I think that, I mean, when you're talking about true partnership, you have to be cool with yourself first.
Mm,
If you're bridging too much over into the other person's lane, that's codependent.
yeah. Well,
Two equal competent adults building something together, that's what a relationship is.
yes, and it's hard, right?
And it's hard.
Yeah. Because, when you're in something, when you're in the trenches, when you are in love, it's hard to see what a lot of other people see because it's hard to see from a different perspective or, any kind of point of view that's not your own.
Yes, and it is. It's super hard to see from any point of view that's not your own. And I think our impulse is to parent someone, because we were raised with parents.
Yeah,
So I think that's the default that we fall into. And
absolutely.
a relationship is just a completely different thing. So we think about our parents, we think about that modeling, we try to do it. And that's not the way modern life works. I think the entire concept of relationships is changing,
Mm.
from a family unit perspective, from a professional perspective. And what was I reading? Oh, it was so interesting. Oh, I know what it was. So I went down a deep rabbit hole about perimenopause. And what's happening to women right now from an evolutionary capacity is we are literally the period of which we can have babies is expanding because we're living longer. Like
Mm.
we're seeing this phenomenon happen in real time. So
Right.
like from an evolutionary perspective, like women's capacities are changing. So this is definitely going to impact our relationship dynamics.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
That's me. Anything else, as in that's my list. Any other final words? Can you believe that it's already been 30 minutes?
No,
This is
this went
how
by way too quick.
I know that we create decent dialogue. You know what? Fuck decent, great dialogue. I don't need to be modest, right? Let's own it. I think you and I create amazing banter and dialogue because every time we talk, I feel like it's 4 minutes has gone by and it's been like 30.
It's been like 30. Yeah, no, I agree. It's always a pleasure. I want to close out with, so when I have relationship clients, the very first thing I ask them to do is make a list of their non-negotiables
Yeah, me too.
in a relationship. And mine are a kindness always. I need somebody that's kind, and I ask them
Oh
for
yeah.
five. Five. I want somebody who's smart and ambitious in life. I want somebody that wants to be social with their partner. And I want somebody that has the same interests in like art and music and doing the same stuff that I like to do because that's
Mm,
like what I like to do with a
sure.
partner. And then I forget what my fifth one was. Probably like gets along with my family and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you know what? I gotta say that your non-negotiables can change. It's not wet cement as you change, and what you were willing to say negotiate a couple years ago, maybe you're not willing to, or vice versa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They change. And so if you're with the wrong person, if they're not hitting any of your non-negotiables, that might be some room for
Yes,
questioning.
yes, absolutely. All my non-negotiables are purely aesthetic.
Stop.
I'm just kidding. You know what? My non-negotiables are kind of right up there with yours. Definitely kind. And you know what's funny is if you're kind to me, but you're an asshole to the server or the busboy or someone, or you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
That's not like consistent like butter. That's not holding up. That is, there's something false about that I won't trust. But yeah, kind goes a long way. It's huge. I think we start there. I'm a big fan of banter. One of my non-negotiables. Um, Passion, it doesn't matter what you do, but that you're actually passionate about it. Another non-negotiable now that I have is I can't be with someone who's complaining about life every day and negative.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. Or like victim mode. I can't anyone that is just. And you know what? Shit happens and you could go through your couple days or whatever, eat the ice cream and feel sorry for yourself and have a pity party, but it just can't be a lifestyle mindset.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with you on that one.
Negativity is huge.
Negativity is huge.
All right, guys. Well, we like to keep these short. If you like our conversations, subscribe so you know when a new episode is up. And anything else, Noelle?
Well, I mean, if you like our conversation and you're interested in life coaching and you want to be trained by the two of us,
Well,
come
two of us
find
plus more. Two of us
plus
plus more.
more. Yep.
Yeah.
Come find me online and let's have that conversation.
Yes, and she's not just saying that. People actually schedule calls, and she will talk to you on the phone. And
Yep.
she's not just saying, "Come find me online." She will actually talk to you. So if you want
Yeah.
to, which I'm proud of. I love that. Our startup. We are in the trenches and we are reachable. I think that's really important.
Yeah, we're accessible for sure.
Yeah. So if you guys have any interest in life coaching or you want to go through the program to change your own life, um, contact us and let's talk about it. We'll let you know if it's the right thing.
Yeah, man. Well, hold down the fucking fort till I get back to LA.
Yes, and we will continue the sitcom that is Noelle Cordeaux.
Awesome. All right, dude. I'll talk to you later.
All right, later. Be well.
Thanks for listening to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast presented by Shift. If you'd like to learn more about what you've heard on today's show, head to shift.us. That's SHFT.us for more information. Feel free to rate us, review us, and tell a friend.